Autism Dad Social Club video podcast, where I, your host, Frederick Jackson, am ready to take you on an unforgettable journey. Each episode is a heartfelt exploration into the lives of fathers navigating the beautiful complexities of raising children with autism. Get ready for an inspiring ride filled with practical insight, valuable resources tailored to families with kids with autism. Together, we'll shine a light on the extraordinary fathers who are reshaping the landscape of autism parenting through their unwavering dedication to fatherhood. Join us now on the Autism Dad Social Club video podcast. Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are you doing today?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing great. I want to first start off and thank you for sharing these resources with us with the Autism Dad Social Club video podcast. Let me just kind of give an introduction to our audience. You are Shambe Jones. You are a public affairs specialist with the Social Security Office. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And you're going to share with us some helpful tips, benefits, and ideas with the Autism Dad Social Club in regards to disability insurance. But I don't want to not give the correct information, but I just want to go ahead and let you share with us what is the differences with the SSI and what does it mean, and the SSDI.
All right. Yeah. And, there's a lot of confusion between the two programs, right? They both sound the same. They're both managed by Social Security. They're both meant to help those that are disabled. But there's huge differences between the two.
Okay.
So SSI is Supplemental Security Income. It's really for people that are 65 or older, as well as those of any age. So there's no age requirement or work requirement, including children who have a disabling condition.
Okay.
And they also have to have limited income and resources for SSI.
Okay.
Now, SSDI, it provides a monthly benefit for people who can no longer work because they have a significant disabling condition. And we don't pay any type of partial or temporary disability payments. Your disability has to have lasted or is expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. That's basically our definition for a disabling condition. Now, the definition of a disability is the same for the two, but the non-medical factors, meaning like income, resources, work, they're very, very, very different. So the families, if you don't remember anything else, remember SSDI is for workers. It's an insurance you pay. You qualify for that by paying those FICA taxes, right?
Okay.
So if you know a child will not be eligible for that, or even an adult that's never worked because they're not currently paying Social Security taxes. It's basically a protection for workers saying, hey, I can no longer work and pay these taxes because of a condition, not because I don't want to anymore, because I physically or emotionally cannot because of my disabling condition.
And that's the SSDI.
Yes, SSDI. And I know today our focus may will be on SSI. So that's the benefit that children will be qualifying for.
Okay. Yeah. To be honest with you, I had them twisted even after reading the material, and that right there is why we're here right now to give explanation and insight and knowledge to the whole matter, so you know exactly what you need to do when the time comes.
Yeah.
Now, just a little background on myself is that I do have a son. He is on the spectrum. They have various degrees of what they consider to be on the spectrum, and he's kind of like on the end where kind of borderline to everything being fine, but there are some challenges that we do look at. Needless to say is that I want to always make sure that I have everything in place for him if something happens to me, or in the time that it comes, or that I'm able to share with him to be able to, take advantage of, to be a productive person
Yes.
as he gets older. Um, what are the disability rules? And let's focus on the one for the children, or how does it work in combination with the child and the parent? What are the disability rules? And basically, as you just educated me, for the SSI.
Yeah, so just remember, like I said, SSDI's work. We're not going to be talking about that very much today. We'll kind of hit some spots here and there because sometimes there's a child that works that may be eligible. But like I
Okay.
said, for
Okay.
confusion purposes, let's focus on the
Okay.
SSI. So, SSI for a child under 18, we're looking at their physical or mental impairment or a combination of the two, right? That results in their limitation of functioning. Um,
Okay. Okay.
so as a child, when I look, of course, they're not working. So as a child, we're looking at their functioning. How do they function compared to the average child? So, as you say, your son's on the spectrum. Well, a lot of the questions when you apply for disability for your child, there's going to be a lot of functioning questions, like
Okay.
how does he get? Does he is he able to make friends? Does he listen to authority? Can he spell? Depending on the grade and age level, there's different questions. So, like there's questions
Okay.
for age 0 through 3, 3 to 6, 8 to 12. You know, and
Okay.
because they ask questions about spelling and math and have they played sports, because of course someone with a physical or even maybe a mental disability may have a problem functioning, playing sports, and living that normal childhood life. So um, as you prepare to file for your son, you're thinking about, okay, what do I need to put on this application? We're really looking at the functioning of that child compared to the normal life of another. I'm sorry, the lifestyle of a normal child that can go out and play sports and is able to understand what authority means and what it doesn't, and follow rules and tie their shoes, brush their teeth, bathe by themselves. There's a lot of different
Okay.
questions when it comes to children to test their function. So just understand we're looking at functioning for the disability rules for SSI for children.
Okay. So what I want to do is kind of make it more personal, and it would probably give me a lot of guidance
Uh-huh.
with my audience. So my son. So right now, uh, just kind of give me a brief scenario. So I'm working. My son is 5. Um, is this something that we start to put in place now, or is it something that we put in place once he turns 18?
It can be either or, and I'll
Okay.
kind of break it down a little bit. So as a minor child prior to the age of 18, there's something called deeming. Deeming means that we count the parent's income and resources against that child. So remember, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, is an income and resource based program. So when you file for benefits, before we even send it over to say, hey, this child is disabled, we have to go through the finances to make sure that person's under the income and resource guidelines. And it's depending on your financial circumstances and the resources you have, we may deny that application even though your child is disabled because you're over the income and resource threshold.
Okay.
Now, if that's the case, at age 18, that deeming stops and we no longer count the parent's income and resources. We only look at what that child has. So
Okay.
what typically happens is, you file for your child at 5 and you realize, hey, they're not going to get approved. Well, on that child's 18th birthday, not a day before, you need to go ahead and contact us and file that application for SSI, because now we're only looking at what that child has. And to
Okay.
kind of back up what you said before, making sure you are protecting your son and making sure he's ready to go. You know, as he approach 18, there's special needs trust, there's uh Texas Able accounts, things like that parents can go and research and get a little more information if they want to set aside assets and income for their children, because those are things that we may not count as a resource. But if you just say, "Hey,
Okay.
I'm saving $50,000 in my son's bank account," well, we're going to count that as a resource if it's not
Okay.
in some sort of like a special needs trust or a Texas Able account. That money's being used for education and support of that disability and things like that.
Okay. So I mean that's very interesting question. So basically, if I was to leave, 150, 200, whatever, is that if I put it in his bank account and something happens to me, at that point, you guys will be counting those assets. But if we're able to move it into a trust, for him. And I'm sorry, what type of trust?
Like a special needs
A
trust.
special needs trust.
Mhm.
And at that point, you may not count those assets, and then it would just be solely based off of where he is earning income, his ability to actually function out in the world. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's one thing the parents don't realize. Yeah, you do want to do a bit of research if you have those assets set aside, and you know, like, hey, at 18, so you do want to do some research and say, hey, do I need to set up a special needs trust? Make sure it's set up. And attorneys, you'll work with attorneys that will know the specific language that is needed, so it doesn't count as a resource for the SSI
Okay.
eligibility. And then also the Texas Able account. Yeah, I would call them and say, you know, get some information on them and see how much money you can set aside. But yeah,
Okay.
you don't want that just sitting in a normal checking or savings account, because yeah, that would be counted as a resource and make them ineligible.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what are some of the best practices in regards to filing?
Well, number one, file as soon as possible, right? You know, if you don't know, you know, get a decision from us, because some people don't know. Hey, I'm on the borderline of my income and resources. I'm not sure. File an application with us. We'll give you a formal determination and tell you exactly why you don't qualify. One, because things change, right? During
Right.
COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had to sell homes and sell businesses. So then children became eligible for SSI, even if it's for
Mm,
a temporary period, right? Because
right.
SSI is a month by month entitlement program. So, say your son only gets SSI for 18 months. Well, we pay for 18 months. When things go back to normal, you know, we can stop the benefits at that time. So, one is file an application as soon as possible. And if you're unsure, contact us. We'll walk you through the application, because we do a lot of pre-screening up front to make sure you qualify based on income and resources before we send it over for a medical decision. So, and then not just that, but our applications are taking 6 to 7 months for an initial decision. So the
Okay.
application process is pretty lengthy. I'll be honest with you. And number two, just complete a very thorough application, right? So list all of your medical sources, whether you know, from the school, from the doctors, from psychiatrists, from letters from anyone that's evaluated your child. Because what happens
Okay.
is people may list one source, but they don't list, you know,
All of the
they don't put the
sources.
IEP in there from the school, right? You have your
Okay.
ARD meetings, things like that. As a parent, you know, make sure you're including that, and make sure you get a electronic copy of your IEP from the school, because
Okay.
sometimes parents will file in the summertime. Well, guess what? School is closed. It can be a little bit of a headache to get that information, so it can stall out your application. So any
Okay.
information you can gather and have on electronic, you can submit to us yourself. Now we gather all the medical records for you, so you don't have to go out and bring up medical records for you. All you have to do is tell us where to get the medical information from, and we'll actually work with those sources on the back end for you.
Yeah. So
But it's
you're
good to
talking.
have.
I'm sorry. So you're talking about like a doctor's office or a treatment center or some type
Yes.
of ABA. Is it ABA would count too as far as the medical or no?
Yeah, yeah. You list any sources, and we'll gather those sources. All you have to do in your application is the questionnaire is going to ask you, "Hey, where have you been seen?" You want to list
Okay.
any and all places, and we'll gather the medical records for you. You don't have to bring anything to us. I just like
Okay.
to give the parents the tip of getting that IEP on electronic file, because schools open and close, you know, for summer, winter
Right.
breaks, things like that. So if you have it on file already, and the school is not responding to us, then you can submit it to us yourself.
Okay. Okay. And you make a great point. And in the business that I'm in, the one thing I always look at is if you go ahead and submit your paperwork now. You see what the guidelines are. You guys are going to give people thresholds, guidelines to let you know what you're working with. So you know that, like you say, during COVID, is that all of a sudden you lost your job. These other things were going on. And of course, you were trying to focus on a whole bunch of other things, yet alone trying to take care of,
Yes.
those things. It's like to be able to say, oh, okay, we can go ahead and submit. Now, a question. Do the thresholds or do certain guidelines change year to year?
Not necessarily. Our resources have been the same. So it's basically it's $4,000 for one parent in the household. It's $5,000 for two parents in the household. And
Okay.
then if that child is being raised by a grandparent, uncle, aunt, that's not the biological, we only look at the $2,000 in resources that that child has. Now resources come in many forms, right? It can be checking your balance in your checking account, savings account, 401k balances,
Okay.
vehicles you have, property you own, things like that. So, and that's why it's really important for people to contact us to because we'll
Yeah.
go through the questionnaire and we'll go through what bank accounts you have. We do exclude some things. Like if you have a primary residence, we exclude that. So you can live in a big old nice house. We're
Okay.
not going to count that house as a resource, but we'll count any rental properties or secondary properties you have or land. And like a
Okay.
vehicle, we're not gonna count your first vehicle, but any secondary vehicles and third vehicles be counted towards that resource guideline. So sometimes
Interesting.
people just assume, well, I live in a nice house. Well, maybe that house is inherited from a family or something like that. I've helped plenty of people where they have a nice house, they didn't pay for it. Now the house is paid in, it is free and clear, but they didn't file because they thought that that one home, their primary residence, would get them a denial because of the
Right.
resources. Well, we exclude your primary residence. Now, if you're renting that house out, living somewhere else, we'll count it. But if you're living in there and that's your primary residence, we'll
Okay.
exclude your home.
Okay. Okay. Um, Now you did mention about the possibility of being denied for certain reasons. So,
Mhm.
but let's elaborate on that a little bit. So, what should I do if I get denied?
Uh, One, file an appeal, right? So there's our it depends. So you can get denied for non-medical reasons like income and resources,
Okay.
and you can get denied because of your medical condition wasn't determined to be severe enough.
Okay.
If it's
Okay.
non-medical reasons and you making $200,000 a year, there's nothing you
Right.
can do, right? So,
Right. Got it.
so if it's that, unless something changes, now the medical reasons, you want to do what's called file an appeal. So,
Okay.
kind of what happens as far as we look at the lifeline of an application, the first thing you do is Social Security takes that application. We do
Okay.
all the pre-screening. We make sure you're under those income and resource guidelines, and then we send it over to what's called the Disability Termination Services Office. That's a
Okay.
state office. That's a third party from Social Security, and they're the ones that talk to the doctors, the schools, and they make that medical determination.
Okay.
So if you're denied, understand that you do have appeal rights. So there's basically three levels. So the first level is called a reconsideration. So if you're denied, you have 60 days when you get that denial letter to file an appeal.
60 days. Okay.
60 days, yes. Um, so what you don't want to do is keep filing new applications. You want to go through the appeal process. So you get
Okay.
denied, file an appeal. It's called a reconsideration. It'll go back to our disability office. Someone will make another determination. If it's approved, great. We'll send you a letter saying, hey, this is your payment amount, payment dates, things like that. If it's denied, you still have another appeal you can do called a hearing. A hearing puts you in front of an administrative law judge, and it kind of has a
Okay.
little bit more human touch to it a little bit, because you're standing there, with you or your attorney, which I'll get to in a second, and you're kind of talking about your case.
Okay.
And then you have that. So if it's approved, once again, great. We'll take care of you, send you the information you need. Then if that's denied for any reason, the last level is called an appeals council. You have 60 days, of course, once you get that denial letter from the hearing. You have 60 days to file an appeal to the appeals council. Now, if it goes through those phases, then yeah, it's time to start a new application.
Okay.
But what
Okay.
frequently happens is people get denied, they wait another 6, 7 months, then they refile. Well, you
Okay.
don't want to do that because we'll take you back to your original application date if you're approved and you follow through the appeal process. So it may take you 2 years to get approved, right? But we'll pay you 2 years of benefits if you go through the appeals process rather than file a new application. Because every time
Right.
you start a new application, your application date starts over.
All over again. Okay.
Yeah, and then once you're denied, that's the time to maybe seek attorney advice. We can't recommend any attorneys, of course, but there's plenty of great attorneys that will take your case, and you don't pay them anything unless you actually win, right? There's even
Okay.
some that'll do it completely for free. That's a little bit of legwork and research you have to do on your own, but definitely if you're not comfortable once you get the denial letter, going through that process, that's the time to seek attorney advice. But I can't stress enough is do not keep filing new applications. Go through that appeals process. And
Okay.
you know, like I said, people always ask, why does it take me to have to file an appeal to get approved? From my point of view, I've done probably over 1,000 disability applications. Typically, people aren't very thorough on their initial application.
Yeah. I can.
And when they get denied, they're like, well, you didn't include this, or I didn't include my IEP, and I only had one doctor, my child's seen six. Well, that's why it's really important to make that initial application very, very thorough, and then follow up as soon as possible on any notices or anything that needs to be returned to either Social Security or our disability termination offices. But Really, it's not that you filed an appeal. Typically, it's because that first application was not very thorough. Because, like I said, a
Okay.
lot of times I'll see one or two medical sources on the initial application, and then they filed the appeal. Now we got 7 or 8 medical sources,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
and,
Okay.
and additional medications and different things like that. So just make sure that the application is as thorough as it can be up front. Now, if they're still seeing doctors as the process goes along, you can always give us that
Add.
information
Okay.
throughout the application
Okay.
life of the application. Yes.
Well, I mean, you kind of um, you've shared with us that the benefits that are received, and I may know the answer, but let's share it with our audience. Is like, why do the benefit uh, fluctuate?
Yeah. So remember, SSDI, we were talking about the workroom, right? That
Hmm.
benefit does not fluctuate.
Okay.
We're paying you based on your earnings up to the point you became disabled. So
Okay. Yes.
SSDI,
Yeah.
just to,
Okay.
that does not fluctuate.
Okay.
Now, SSI or supplemental security income, that does fluctuates. For instance, for 2024, the maximum amount someone can get is $943. That's the max.
Okay.
That's no matter if you live in Texas, Wyoming, New Mexico, it doesn't matter. We're a federal benefit. Now, some states it may pay what's called a state supplement because their cost of living is higher. But from Social Security, from the government, they're only getting a maximum of $943.
Okay.
Now, remember that 943 is based on your income and resources. So sometimes parents will qualify for SSI for their child will qualify based on the parent's income and resources, but maybe based on that income may only get $600 a month because
Okay.
that fluctuates based on your income. There's kind of a
Okay.
rolling scale. Hey, if I make X amount of dollars per month, I'm going to get the 493. Once it goes over that threshold, it's going to kind of be deducted at that point. Also, there's factors such as where you live and who you live with, and are you paying expenses. SSI
Okay.
is basically a shelter pro. It's a shelter. We were providing it for food and shelter.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
for instance, let's use an example. You and your child are living with your parents, but you're not
Okay.
paying anything for the household expenses, and you're not applying that SSI check towards those expenses. Well, your check will be reduced because you're not using it for the purpose of the benefit check. And that's why
Okay.
a lot that's typically the number one reason you'll see checks fluctuate, because people think like, oh, I'm getting this SSI check, I don't want to apply it towards living with my aunt, my uncle, my sister. You have to be applying that benefit towards the household expenses
Okay.
because that's the
Okay.
purpose of the check. It's not for medications, it's not for clothing, it's not for computers, it's not for all those other things. It's really a food and shelter program.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting. Food and
yeah, so
shut.
when you go
Okay.
through and you realize that when you go through the question on the application, we ask questions like, where do you live? Who do you live with? What are you paying for your mortgage or rent? Your utilities, water, sewer, trash, food. Those are the primary questions we ask because we're trying to determine how you're utilizing that benefit check you're getting every month.
Okay.
So if it's the number one reason checks fluctuate, it's probably because of what's called living arrangement. People don't report them correctly. And it's
Okay.
crazy because people think like, oh, I'm not paying anything. I can't afford to live here. Well, your check's going to be reduced. You have to apply something towards
Okay.
that. Like I said, it's really a food and shelter program. So we're really trying to make sure that you have a roof over your head, it's food in your stomach. That's what that check is for.
Okay.
So as a parent, even as a parent or a guardian, when you're helping someone out, apply that SSI towards that food and shelter, help them out with their clothing, their medications, and other things. But that SSI check, the purpose of that check is to be used
It's
for those
so.
household expenses.
Okay. Okay. Now you did talk about this, so I want to cover it on two parts. Is uh, let's say um, we do have the trust set up, we do have those things. Is like, and at the point that something happens to me before my son, me and my wife before my son turns 18, just kind of draw us a picture of what that looks like with, let's say, a few days before he's 18 and a few days after he's 18. What must my son do, or what must we have in place for someone to help him?
Yeah. So let's look at it. Let's say your son's 10, right?
Okay.
You pass away, you become disabled. So if you pass away, if you start your retirement benefits with us, or if you become disabled and receive an SSDI,
Hmm.
we will pay your son not for his disability. We pay benefits to young children up to the age of 18 or up to 19, as long as if they have a parent that's on retirement, disability, or that passes away. So,
Okay.
so whether their child has a disability or not, we pay what's called auxiliary benefits for young children.
Okay.
Now, what happens at 18 is now that child can apply for what's called disabled adult child benefits. So we can
Okay.
pay benefits beyond 18 and beyond high school as long as a child was disabled prior to the age of 22. So,
Okay.
like, say you pass away. Well, if you say your son's 19, right? Well, even if they were on SSI, we would actually convert their record from SSI to disabled adult child benefit under your
Automatically.
under your earn. But they have to file.
Okay.
They must by law they have to file for those benefits.
Okay.
SSI is like a totem pole. SSI is the last benefit we'll pay if you're eligible for any other benefits
Okay.
because it's more of a needs-based benefit.
Okay.
And so at 18, like I said, they would file for benefits off your record. Say your child's never worked. You've taken care of them. Your child can be 40 years old. You reach the age of 62, and you've been taking care of your disabled child your whole life. Well, as long as their disability was prior to the age of 22, when you file your retirement application, and we're going to ask, do you have a child that was disabled prior to the age of 22? We can pay that adult child benefits.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's whether you, like, once again, that's whether you pass away, whether you become disabled or you retire, that disabled child benefits are there for you because if that child was disabled prior to age 22. Now, if they were disabled prior to age 22, but they have a long work history, right, we're gonna pay them their own check.
Okay.
But we do have that benefit, and it's probably one of the benefits parents don't really realize that's out there. But we do ask those questions. When you file for retirement and disability. Now, if you pass away, of course, we if someone's on SSI, we get an alert and we'll go ahead and contact you to file. But parents need to know if one parent passes away, then the other parent definitely needs to file for benefits for whether that child is a young child under the age of 18 or an adult child that's disabled.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that right there is a lot of information. And I'll say this is that I learned something here today because I'm actually in the financial arena, and it's always interesting to know how you position yourself financially
Yes.
to help your family. And we all want to strive to make sure that our kids have a great start, a great beginning, but there's always this challenge for someone who um, may have a child with a disability, because now you have to think past yourself,
Hmm.
and that can be a real challenge. And any help that that's beneficial. The biggest takeaway I can get from this is, because I know I speak to a lot of my clients, and they end up just passing cash, passing this on, just putting it, and it's like you mentioned, hey, is this in a trust? I never looked at that as the strategy of saying, hey, you can have, you know, 500,000 $1 million you didn't pass on to you left it in a checking account. You left you left it in these things. Now, a quick question, since let's say it was in a 401k or an IRA, let's say $500,000, I have that in an IRA, and I pass away, he's the beneficiary. Does that count once does that count against him as far as the income if it's
Yeah,
not in a
yeah,
trust?
if it's not in a trust, yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
if that's where you want to see about rolling that over into a Texas Able account or that
Okay.
money. Once if that does happen, that's what you want to. You said that planning is the biggest piece, right?
Wow.
So that's
Okay.
that planning piece. Like, hey, well, I want to set this trust up. If something happens to me, I want this money to go into this trust, this design trust for my child. So a lot of it is the, like you said, the planning ahead and knowing
Okay.
how to plan. Because yes, if something happens to you and they put that money in that child's account, that's going to count as a resource.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
want to figure out if is there a way for me to, if this happens, I can funnel this money into this trust account, or what's the parameters for me to put this money into like a Texas Able account if they're able to do that. And that's why it's really important as a parent of a disabled child to have those conversations with the attorneys or
Yes.
Texas Able now, so you know, right? You already
Yes.
know, okay, I can't do it this way. I need to go to special needs trust route, or hey, you know
Okay.
what? Actually, Texas Able is better because they have these benefits with no fees, and it's state funded. So I would say when it comes to that, do a little bit of legwork, and Texas Able. I can't speak for attorneys. There's many of them out there. I'm sure they're great, but Texas Able is amazing. They're
Yeah.
really they give you good information. There's no gray area with them, right? You're dealing
Okay.
with a organization that's really they're there for the benefit of the child and the family. So having a conversation with them, they're very knowledgeable about that. I advocate for them because I've seen the work they do
Okay.
for families, and so I always say, hey, stop there first, right? Stop
Yeah.
there, have a conversation, see what your options are, and you'll know whether it's a good fit for you.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I just want to kind of end on this note that um, I'm seeing that you guys are offering a lot of insight and a lot of resources. And from what you're telling me is if we come to you guys that you're laying it all out, you're helping us evaluate where we are, and you're sharing additional resources to help maximize yourself. It's not just like, hey, I'm gonna file an application, yes or no, and you don't see anything, but you actually lay out parameters to let you know what do you need to do, what are the next steps. And I believe that that's always a lot of missing components that people don't look at, as we said in planning, that they don't look past
Yes,
what's going on today and say, I need to do this now instead of later, because you never know what can happen later. And then all of a sudden you didn't left a situation in a whirlwind that they're not able to handle. And
hmm
even if they are able to handle, it's like, why would you allow your benefits or an advantage? And a lot of times people say, well, you have enough of it. It's like you always look at how to maximize yourself in any state.
oh yeah,
And
100%.
that is what we're here for. But I want to thank you most definitely, because I know I've been educated on it, and I know our podcast listeners with the Autism Dads will. You did share with us some resources that I have, and it will be down in our links below that you can read up on, uh, and you can contact anyone at the Social Security office. And I want to thank you again for your time and your education. And we may actually have you back again for some additional things if we get certain responses to give us a little bit more insight. But I want to welcome
Absolutely.
and thank Sean Bay Jones for being here with us. And I am Frederick Jackson with the Autism Dad Social Club video podcast, and we're going to leave you with that. Enjoy, and everyone have a great day. Take care, Mr. Jones.
Have a good one, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Autism Dad Social Club video podcast. We hope you found our content insightful and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on our latest videos. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family who might benefit from it. I'm your host, Frederick Jackson, saying until next time, keep learning, growing, and embracing the autism journey. Take care, and we'll see you on our next podcast.
Disclaimer: the content presented in Autism Dad's Social Club video podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Autism Dad's Social Club as a whole. The information provided in this podcast is not intended to substitute professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Viewers are encouraged to consult with qualified professionals regarding any questions or concerns related to autism or parenting. Autism Dad's Social Club disclaims any liability for any loss or damage arising directly or indirectly from the use of or reliance on the information provided in this podcast.